What is the number? Yeah. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya. They didn't notice. Rama had asked permission to go 3 verses earlier in verse 39. Seeing the Lord's silence, Brahma took that as his permission. Krishna could not break his silence because he had to perfectly play the part of the young son of the king of Vraja in the pastime of the bewilderment of Brahma. Krishna continued to act as if looking for the calves and boys, as described in the previous chapter, 10, 13, 16. When Brahma began his prayers, Krishna, as a young gopa, anxious to find the calves, could not understand Brahma had come from, what he was doing and what he was saying. By remaining silent, Krishna completed his act as a cowherd boy. He played the role of being ignorant of his own powers in front of Brahma, who was dependent on him, and thus the word natya, or actor, is used. Paragraph. However, in front of Yashoda and other devotees in intimate relationships, the ignorance that he shows for his own powers, covered by the Mahaprema of the inhabitants of Braja, is not a pretense, and thus is not described as natya, or actor. That ignorance is real. Wow. Krishna brought the calves, absorbed in eating grass, back to the same place on the bank of the river, Swakam, that's where the boys were eating, because the cows had grazed and Krishna brought them back to where the boys were. That place was the same as before, with the cowherd boys sitting in the same positions. In that place were the same original cowherd boys, Yatha, Purva, Sakam. Different from the expansion cowherd boys who performed Leela for 1 year with the Lord. Wow. Jiva Goswami writes, Krishna gave permission to Brahma, his son, Swa Bhuvam. This phrase indicates that he forgave Brahma for his offenses, just as a father forgives his son. Krishna gave his permission, asking with a smile, "Are you going so soon?" This indicates Krishna's humility, mercy, forgiveness, teaching, joking, and scolding, with a hint of his own ambitions. I will not be happy with these boys, these forms of boys and calves that you put to sleep. I will gain happiness from these boys and calves in a waking state. After giving Brahma permission, Krishna brought the calves, the same now as in their previous state, to the bank of Yamuna, where the boys were eating lunch as previously. The boys looked at him with yogurt rice in his hand as previously. The power of his Maya acting by his will reconciled all things. Though the mothers remembered the activities of the boys who were actually Krishna's expansion from the previous day, it was not desirable that they should remember incidents which occurred during the previous year. Sanatana Goswami writes, it gets like Sherlock Holmes, really. Who did what to whom? Brahma did not leave only by his will. Krishna gave permission to Brahma, forgive him for his offenses. After that, Tata, Krishna brought the original calves to the bank where the boys had been eating swakam, or where the calves had been. The calves had been in the forest, or on the riverbank at another place. Brahma brought the calves and the boys back, or the Lord brought them back. It is clear that the boys remained in illusion at that place for 1 year, for it is said that Krishna brought only the calves back. He had previously gone to get the calves to pacify the anxious boys. It does not say that they came from somewhere else and again sat there. With the disappearance of Maya, They were sitting on the bank for eating their meal. Paragraph. But this was not visible. Why could other cowherds not see them there? Did they not suffer from cold wind during cold and wind during? Suffer from cold wind during that time? Was it because of powerful illusion? Though the Lord saw this condition of the boys, why was he indifferent? Did Brahma take the boys to Brahmaloka, to a place that the Lord could not see, and keep them there bewildered by illusion? That is not proper. Paragraph. Mystery is about to be solved. It was said in 10:13:41, that's previous chapter, that they were on the bed of Maya. By the mercy of the Lord, they did not suffer. Wherever they were taken, they were not visible to the Lord, who is condensed knowledge. When Krishna previously did not see them and began searching for them, this was a show of extreme affection, or in order to fool Brahma. That was previously stated. Thus the boys were situated at that place. It's still not clear. They were stayed, or they were taken somewhere. Sridhar Swami says, how could they remain sitting there for such a long time? Did they forget about eating and drinking? Reply, the boys were situated as previously. The boys, the calves, the bank, the food, and the seats were there as previously. And the food didn't get stale after 1 year. But after 1 year, they would have grown in form. By the power of the Lord, the boy's behavior and appearance over the year manifested to the mothers and others by himself as the boys. Otherwise, there would be some difference between the boys of the previous year and now. Jiva Goswami from Kramasundarbha. After granting his son, Brahma, permission to leave, the Lord took the previous calves, that means the original ones, and brought them to the riverbank where he had been taking his meal, and where previous cowherd boyfriends remained just as before. Quote, I will not be happy with these forms of boys and calves that you put to sleep. Unquote. After giving Brahma permission, he brought the calves, the same now as in their previous state, to the bank of the Yamuna, where the boys were eating lunch as previously. Okay, now let's go forward and see what happens. Text 43. Translation. O King, although the boys had passed an entire year apart from the Lord of their very lives, they had been covered by Lord Krishna's illusory potency. Just says Maya, Krishna, Maya, illusory potency of Krishna. And thus considered that year merely half a moment. Vishwanath writes, 4 verses show how the power of Yogamaya allowed the cowherd boys to be unaware of missing time. for 1 year and complete their lunch pastimes with Krishna as previously. Without their prana devata, 1 year became like a moment as they were covered by Yogamaya. Usually in meeting Krishna for a long time seemed very short, but in this case, the separation from Krishna seemed very short because of Yogamaya. Jiva Goswami writes, the boys' ignorance of time was caused by Maya. They passed a year without the Lord of their lives, Atmanaha, or they were bewildered by Krishna's own Maya, Atmanaha. Though it was Brahma's Maya, it was permitted by Krishna and carried out by Brahma. Balaram thought, unquote, it can only be the Maya. This is at the end of chapter 13. Balaram starts figuring it out. It can only be by the Maya of my brother and nothing else that has fooled me. Though it is impossible that Balaram could be bewildered by Krishna's Icha Shakti endowed with all powers, it is not impossible. Thus Balaram was also subject to Maya, Hata. This meaning of Hata is in accord with Amar Kosh dictionary. He was the Lord of their lives, since he was the prince among the cowherds. That means Krishna. The boys thought that only 5 moments had passed. In their perception, time had remained without passing of muhurtas, days and seasons. Shukadev calls out to the king in astonishment. And Sanatana Goswami writes, and this is it for this evening, the boys' ignorance of time was caused by Maya. They passed a year in the absence of the Lord of their lives, Atmanaha. Though it was Brahma's Maya, it was permitted by Krishna and carried out by Brahma. Same, if you heard. Balaram thought, same, it can only be the Maya of my brother and nothing else that has fooled me. Thus everything was adjusted that was previously discussed. They were covered by Krishna's Maya. He was the Lord of their life because he was Krishna, the younger son of Nanda, and they were the boys of Braja. Arbaka. Shukadev calls out to Parikshit in amazement. Certainly is amazing. And that's it. We'll resume with text 44. So while I was gone, well, not here in Chicago, we completed Brahma's prayers. So you guys missed out. But these verses are immediately following the prayers, and like what happens next in this great mystery. So a few comments on what really happened. And our acharyas have different realizations. We've discussed this here, right? You part of that discussion? Yata yata Ishadanam tadrashi siddhi bhavati tadrashi. Yata yata Shraddhavan Siddhi Bhavati Tadrashi from Brahma Samhita, text 61. A phrase that says, according to one's faith and there's realization. The same thing that says, even in worldly events, multiple people experiencing the same event, they'll report it differently. Their subjective experience of worldly events. So then one might say, okay, but that's, one conditioned soul, another conditioned soul. What about perfected souls? Are they going to experience the same event differently? And they have, according to faith, Krishna reveals himself, isn't it? According to faith. And the common, one of the common verses that's referred to is when Krishna enters the wrestling arena of Kamsa, there's 11 different categories of people that saw Krishna this way and that way. It was the same Krishna walking across the wrestling arena, and they saw him differently. And then what to speak of from that same category, some will see him differently. It's the same Krishna doing the same thing. So similarly, our acharyas, or similarly perfected souls, even in Krishna's pastimes, one pastime, different persons are going to experience and report that pastime differently. One that comes to mind is what happened when the twin Arjuna trees fell. And what did everybody say? This one said this, that one said that, the other one said another thing, and another one said another thing. It was the same Krishna doing the same thing. According to faith, then there's realization. So our acharyas, that they're faithful to the text, but according to the text and their relationship with Krishna, they're going to have different realizations about not just, how to parse or divide the text so you can make it, because they do this too. One way it can be read as this, another way it can be read as that, another way it can be read as a third thing. Text. But if you want to say, take this particular case, because we hear Brahma stole the calves and the cowherd boys and put them in a cave. There's no question about it. That's what it says. And now he did. Maya, and they did whatever they did. So they went wherever they went. Then on the other hand, when Brahma came back at the end of chapter 12 and saw what he saw, he didn't see the original cowherd boys. He saw forms of Krishna as the cowherd boys. And then that for 1 year, it's not explicitly, if we gloss over it really quickly, it's kind of like a magician's trick. Like under which shell is the pea, and you move the shells around, and then you lift one up, and there's the pea. You lift some other ones up, and it's not there, it's not not anywhere, and then you lift another one again, and there it is. It's like, so we can say, well, the time of Brahma, the moment that passed for Brahma was a whole year on earth. That's the shell game. And it's true, but exactly when was that moment of Brahma? That a whole year passed, and he knew it. Because he says in his prayers in chapter 14, for a whole year. For a whole year. How fortunate were the mothers and the cows who provided their own milk to you, not to the calves and cowherd boy, to you for a whole year. So he knew his moment is 1 year on earth. But which moment was it? Which of Brahma's moments was it? And while he's having this conversation with Krishna, how many moments is that? And how many years is passing while he's having this conversation with Krishna? Not for his prayers. 40 prayers. That takes longer than a moment. So, certainly it has to do with relative time. It certainly has to do with Yogamaya. And exactly when and how, it's a principle that at least for my capacity, I just accept the principle. Because it was a year that passed. And his prayers begin after that year had passed, because in his prayers he mentions the year that passed. So maybe it was more than a moment, maybe a few moments. A whole year's worth of time on earth that 1 year passed. However long that was on earth. And Brahma's time. That's the principle. And how do you apply the principle? Not so clear. And it's mentioned earlier in this chapter, I think, somewhere. I think it's earlier in this chapter, that after, two things. Brahma, the commentary says, Brahma didn't volunteer where the cowherd boys were, where he had put them. Although Krishna had gone looking for the calves, Krishna had gone looking for them, and he knew that Krishna had gone looking for them. He didn't bother to tell him because you're omniscient, you know where they are. And wherever they were in the forest. They were brought back from the forest to the riverbank where the cowherd boys were. But in other places it says Krishna went to where the cowherd boys were and brought them to the riverbank. But he doesn't need to get up and go and do something. He doesn't need time and space to do anything. He has mystic powers. He can just, Prabhu, let's go. Let's sit down and have lunch again. And there they are. Part of the difficulty is trying to understand things that fit within our concept of time and space and work. Because work that we do is within time and space. But Krishna's work doesn't require time and space. So the chronology is important to us, but for Krishna it's easy to do whatever he wants. Still, there needs to be, because our acharyas consistently make very logical presentations about things. Like a really nice example is the consideration of our acharyas. When was it that Krishna went to Mathura from Vrindavan? And there's really serious detailing of the ages of Krishna when he did his different childhood pastimes that comes at that time when he comes before Vasudeva and Devaki and says, "Oh, my brother and I are we're not very good sons because you were unable to participate in our childhood pastimes because we were afraid of Kamsa." And then it goes through all the details. At that point, it goes through all the details of How old was he when he was in Gokul? At what age did they shift from Gokul to Vrindavan? At what age did they shift from Vrindavan to Nandagram? At what age did they shift from Nandagram to Mathura? And how old was he when he got his Upanayana and then went off to school? I mean, there's chronology. Krishna is not limited, but our understanding for the sake of his pastimes is there is some chronology to his pastimes. And in situations like this, we'll find that from time to time, one acharya has this realization, another acharya has that realization, and our binary processor says, well, if this one's right, then that one's not right. Wrong. And if that one's right, then this one is wrong. So is it this one or is it that one? And the answer is they're both right, or they're both are expressions of their realization of Krishna's pastimes. Krishna's pastimes are being revealed to them according to their faith, and they're describing according to their experience that's according to their faith. How else can you express something according to your experience? And our experience is resting on faith. But their faith is not in their senses or their mind. Their faith is entirely resting upon Krishna. And Krishna reveals different things according to their faith. So we just love their devotion and their sharing of their realization of Krishna's pastimes. So is it relative or is it absolute? Well, it's definitely personal, but it's not relative. Or, the pastimes aren't real, they're just subjective impressions or something like that. How do we know anything about anything? How do we know anything about transcendence? We know through Shabda Praman, through sound. And the best is Aparusheya Shabda Praman. And the best of that Aparusheya Shabda Praman is Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the Supreme Court when it comes to truths about Krishna. So our acharyas are faithful. We heard the commentaries, I could read them again, but they refer to words within the Bhagavatam, and they orient their understandings according to the words of the Bhagavatam, because that's the Supreme Court. But they have, it can be understood this way, it can be understood that way, or it can be understood a slightly different way. So that's the compass, that's the true north for the readings and the commentaries of our acharyas, and they express according to their faith and their relationship with Krishna. They can't do otherwise. For that matter, the whole of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what is it? It's Vyasadeva Samadhi. It's not creative writing. The Bhagavatam, the whole the whole of the Vedas, the whole of the Puranas. There's this whole argument that goes on in Tattva Sandarbha about what's the place of the Puranas, because Puranas look like events within time, and the Vedas are timeless. So therefore, using that kind of logic, the Puranas are not Vedic. They're nice, but we don't take them as absolute because they're events within time. And one of the ways that Jiva Goswami addresses this is even within in the Shrutis, there's events. That is to say, these are eternal events that can be the sound vibration narrating them is eternal because the events are eternal. And the pastimes which are eternal are variegated. So sometimes and sometimes. And the Bhagavatam is narrating the thread of the pastimes and the some of the nuances, sometimes and sometimes nuances, are according to the faith of the Acharya. I mean, it's maybe a little uncomfortable to go over this ground, but I think it's good to go over the ground because we shouldn't be blind in our faith. Our faith should be resting upon principle, aparushaya shabda praman. The realizations of perfected souls in their state of samadhi, they're giving their realizations. Resting upon scripture. One of the topics that came up, and because I'm going to do it again, in the Govardhan Parikrama, is the description of Narayana Goswami, or sometimes called Narayana Pandit, who, from Adi Varaha Purana, he gives a description of Govardhan coming to Vrindavan, being carried by Hanuman. It's right in Adi Varaha Purana. Now this Narayana Goswami was a contemporary of the 6 Goswamis. We don't hear so much about him in ISKCON, but he was a disciple of one of Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disciples, or another narration says one of Sanatana Goswami's disciples, and he lived at Radhakund at a time when the 6 Goswamis were residing at Radhakund. And he was given the service by Rupa and Sanatan to continue in their service, which was one of their services, was finding the places of Krishna's pastimes. That was specifically given to them by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they guided him in doing that. And he wrote a book with 333 different places that where they were and the deities of those places and so forth. And he found the deities of those places. So he was an exceptional personality. But when we go to any of the places of Krishna's pastimes, how do we know? We have faith. It's faith that's resting upon Rupa and Sanatan. Here's where this pastime place is. Here's where that pastime place is. How do we know? How do we know anything about anything in relation to transcendence? And Krishna's associates are transcendental associates. And it's not fiction. A mundane person will dismiss the whole thing like fiction. And the devotees have faith in Krishna and the perfected souls who are followers of Lord Chaitanya and empowered by them and so forth. When we go to one of my favorite places, this is now an open secret, one of my favorite places in Vrindavan is Unchigaon. And it's the place of Lalita Saki. And when we have lunch at Unchigaon, because Unchigaon is way up on a hill, the bottom of the hill over to the side is the samadhi of Narayana Goswami, or Narayana Pandit. And over a short distance away is a very, very large and beautiful deity of Balaram, Dauji, that he found. It's not, it's not one of the main deities in Vrindavan that we celebrate and visit regularly. But it's very special. And the details of how he found it and so forth, that's available. But our faith rests upon perfected souls. And we can't advance without faith. You can't advance materially, you can't advance spiritually. You have to have faith in something to do something. Our faith goes to the Bhagavatam and the perfected souls who are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Bhagavatam. And otherwise, we celebrate wonderful stories. And there are places of pastimes that commemorate them. Like, so many, so many. Dankeli Kumudi, the pastime of Krishna's tax pastimes. And multiple of our acharyas have written about Krishna's tax pastimes. And their narrations vary. The theme is the same. And the details are quite different, which is quite okay because Krishna did many tax pastimes. They don't have to be the same. And it's loving exchange. Their experience of loving exchange between Radha and Krishna and the Gopas and the Gopis and different personalities who get involved in the mix. And the essence of those, say, just the tax pastimes, they're loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna and their associates. And we have all faith in that. Because when Rupa Goswami writes something, that's it. When Raghunath Das Goswami writes something, that's it. And if they say something different, this one, that one, it's just wonderful. It's not disturbing to the mind. There's Krishna's pastimes are unlimited, and they have different experiences and realizations according to their faith of those pastimes. And we're at their feet. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion. The sound is working perfectly well now, right? Okay. Check for the ring back, because there's a little bit of a ring back. Go ahead.
I have two questions. One of them is related to the Cowherd Boys' memories. I feel like I've heard before, I think I've heard you speak about Krishna arranged that so that he could reciprocate with the gopis' desires to all of them to marry Krishna. So then wouldn't the Cowherd Boys, when they come back, they're like, wait, we're married? Kind of like
what happens when the Cowherd Boys come back from
a year past? They were do they have those memories from that year?
No.
So they don't know they're married?
Oh, you're talking on the marriage topic now. Oh. Because the ones who were married was Krishna. Krishna, 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 Krishna. They were all Krishna. The gopis. The gopis were the gopis, and the cowherd boys were Krishna. So the little boys could have said, "Mommy, I don't remember marrying this girl." And she said, and Mommy said, "Well, yes, you did. How come you can't remember?" Don't you remember this and that and the other? But by same as in the same way as the cowherd boys, 1 year had passed, and for them it was flesh. They're going to say to Krishna, "Oh, you're so attached, you can't be away from us for a moment. Sit down and finish lunch." Nothing. The total lapse of 1 year that passed, and everything that went on during that 1 year. And our bodies got 1 year older. They didn't even notice their bodies got 1 year older either. What little boys, they want to be taller and, There's one home I visit, and there's markings on the wall where their son, they marked he was this tall at this time and that tall, and it's like, so, little boys are little boys. But they there was a total lapse. So matak smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Their mother said what they said, and that's it. They didn't question it. "Mommy, I don't remember." They just, by super soul's arrangement, they did what they did, and when they grew up, they did what they did. Because that's their relationship with Krishna and his potencies. They're just fulfilling Krishna's desire. That's what's important to them, and accordingly, they have that intimacy with Krishna. Sure.
You were mentioning how the acharyas, they're not writing fictitious.
Not what?
They're not writing fiction. It's all
Yes.
according to their realization and based off of.
It's reality. It's real. Yes.
Is there a place for fiction in Krishna consciousness?
Is there a place for
fiction?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Classic. Jaiva Dharma. You're familiar. It's 2 college-age kids from Calcutta. And they go off and, have this whole adventure. It's fiction. But in the context of fiction, 4 different scriptures are told, making it of interest to the audience. The fiction part holds the interest of the audience. That's an example. The Puranjan story, right in the Bhagavatam, it's fiction. And then Narada tells, this means that. Okay.
So Maharaj, actually today's class, the place of Vrindavan being like the petals of the lotus that close and open.
Yes.
As
That's
per
another
Krishna as
example.
well. So I was just thinking, we cannot really comprehend the greatness of Krishna. So for the time being, just to hear these pastimes and the commentaries from acharyas, is it okay to just say that, this is what happened, but it's just, even if you don't understand.
Sure.
So-
We should, you and Sri Rupa can get together and narrate to each other. Oh, there's so many things you don't understand. And we have faith that the messages are true and the messages are purifying. And as the purification proceeds, resting upon my investing my faith in those narrations, cleansing will go on and awakening will go on. And I'll slowly, ever so slowly start to understand more as the bhakti creeper evolves and grows, becomes mature. For now, it's sadhana. I have faith, and the stories are wonderful. The philosophies are over my head, and but I'm being purified, and slowly I can start to understand some things that I couldn't understand in the beginning. Is that all right?
Maharaj, I was contemplating on the various acharyas and how, according to different persons' faith, the realization could be different. At the same time, at least in the case of the pure devotees, it seems to be that they can accommodate that others might have a different realization.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And they're very appreciative and respectful also.
Yes.
Towards others and their realizations.
Yes. Including different sampradayas. What to speak of within one sampradaya.
Yes.
Or say the other way, between sampradayas, even within sampradaya. But there's some rules. It has to rest upon shabda, the Vedic knowledge.
So that's an appreciation or comment, more or less, from me. And
that the application is we should appreciate the services of others. That's where you're going next.
That's
huh? Okay.
Yes. It seems like that's. Thank you for sharing that. That gives me a positive reinforcement.
Before you even said it, I said it. Narrow-mindedness is my service is the best. My understanding of my service is the best. And that fellow over there, that lady over there, that doesn't have the same understanding that I have of the same service that we do together. There's something, because I'm right, they have to be not right. Yeah. Or this is better, better luck next lifetime, Prabhuji. Or let me try to, win you over to the right way.
Thank you. Yes.
There's boundaries. But, the spirit of bhakti is the essence, and there's boundaries of the spirit of bhakti.
So can I process it this way, that only Krishna is the only person that knows, or that's the absolute, and everything else, whatever I am processing as right or wrong, is relative, and not be getting carried away by...
Exactly the topic in the morning class. Exactly the topic in the morning class. Uddhava's instructions from Krishna. There's boundaries. There are prescriptions.
Yeah.
It's exactly the topic in the morning class.
Thank you.
But those prescriptions have they have a purpose. They're absolute in the sense that, the right and wrong, and to be done and not to be done, and nivriti and pravriti, and anukul yasha and pratikul yasha. They have their place, the do's and the do nots. But their purpose is one thing. To the degree they serve the purpose, there's strength in them. Okay. We're going to go online.
This question is from Antaranga Sheva Mataji. Due to Yoga Maya, the boys felt separation to be like one moment. And other times, it is described that devotees, gopis, feel separation to be like yuga. Can you please explain this difference?
Yeah, it was right in the commentary that we read. The essence is attachment, and by the influence of Yoga Maya, this is the key. By the influence of Yoga Maya, that separation for 1 year felt like a moment. By the influence of Yoga Maya, 1 year felt like a moment. Now, normally it doesn't work that way. Normally it's the other way. Separation is 1 moment feels like yuga. That's the normal way, but Yoga Maya can make it work the other way. And even either way, it's Yoga Maya or Yoga Maya. It's the influence of the internal potency enhancing the pastime of Krishna and the feelings of affinity for Krishna.
The next question is from Snegavalli Mataji, a long question.
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The BPT purport of verse 42 states Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's realization that Krishna is thinking that where did Lord Brahma come from? What is he doing? And what are these words Lord Brahma is speaking, etc. In chapter 13, we heard that Krishna showed all his potencies and all Vishnu Murtis to Lord Brahma. So Krishna knew he is Lord Brahma. Then why would he think about Lord Brahma like this? The realization does not seem to match with the pastime. Could you please comment?
Sure. Yoga Maya is acting on Krishna as well as Yoga Maya is acting on those with whom Krishna associates. So, for example, Krishna for a moment can be as if bewildered. It's Iva. So Krishna can be for a moment feeling, who is this Brahma, and so forth and so on. What's he talking about? That can be an influence of Krishna's own Yogamaya potency upon Krishna for his enjoyment, because the essence of that Yogamaya potency is to facilitate Krishna's enjoyment in addition to his pastimes, because his pastimes are for his enjoyment. Some other examples. Krishna seeing the cowherd boys enter the mouth of Aghasura, and he becomes bewildered. There's detailed commentary on that bewilderment experience of Krishna, and it's Iva, as if, because Krishna never loses his omniscience. He's eternally omniscient. He doesn't become and lapse in and out of being omniscient. He's eternally omniscient. But Yogamaya may make it as if, and he's astonished at his own Yogamaya potency's influence. And then in the next moment, he knows what to do. There's other examples, but when Krishna sees the cowherd boys by the side of the Kaliya lake, he feels something for a moment. And it's Iva. He's omniscient. Going to look for the calves. He's omniscient. He doesn't have to go look for the calves. And then he can't find them. Then he comes back. When he comes back, the cowherd boys are gone. It's all happening by his a nice way that may help us think of this is the example of Rupa Goswami. The pastimes of Krishna move like waves of a river or of an ocean. And as the ocean is an ocean of rasa, and as the waves of the ocean of rasa move, sometimes one wave goes up and another wave is small and it gets crushed by the big wave, and then the small wave pushes back, and the waves just keep moving and moving. It's bhakti rasa. That's Krishna's life. And sometimes. So that which seems to you to be contradictory, because here it says this and there it says that, it says the ecstasy of Krishna moving for a moment this way and then for the next moment that way, and it doesn't stop moving. It keeps, like the waves don't stop. You can take a photograph of the waves and the shape of the waves at that moment, and then after the photograph, the waves keep moving and keep moving and keep moving. And our acharyas are giving, and Shukadev Goswami is giving, and Vyasadeva is giving a picture of the movement of those waves. So think of it that way.
This question is from Shiradhika Mataji. From education and culture, it may become habitual to rely on logic and inference
Yes,
to determine where to choose to place one's faith.
yes.
The natural position of the jiva is to repose faith in Krishna. How to become astute at distinguishing the tendency to mix that which is habitual with that.
It's, how do you become advanced in Krishna consciousness? There's the conditioning habitual, and then there's the transcendental spontaneous, natural. So we put on our training wheels to learn how to ride a bicycle. And we do our sadhana in ways that we just stay, in the safe zone and don't go too far from the safe zone. And as you become accomplished at riding a bicycle, you don't need the training wheels anymore. So that the training wheels metaphor is, the vidhis of sadhana bhakti. We just stay within that parameter. Now we're edging out a little bit by reading different commentaries and the commentators saying slightly different things, and that make it a little wobbly. So then you have to panic. You just stay with this vidhis of sadhana bhakti. And as our relationship with Krishna becomes stronger and more specific and revealed, and the affinity for matter becomes slackened consistently, not just momentarily, then the answer to your question lies in the spontaneous stage of bhakti as your guide. Still with reference to scripture, we don't leave to the side Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, but with that maturely established, then our relationship with Krishna becomes the guide. And we're just fine with that. Okay. Anything else? Something over here?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I had a small question on like, since we are totally like, I speaking for myself, I'm totally on the platform, like on the mental platform.
Oh,
So
this is probably quite of a ride for you.
yes.
Yeah.
So faith, like if I think what is faith for me, it's sometimes high and it's sometimes really low.
That's everybody. That's not just you.
So how do you deal when your faith is going really low? How to not let you fall, like
How to not
how
fall.
not to fall? Yeah.
Good association. Because they'll catch you. When the temperature dropped, like kaboom, there was whatever the polar vortex or whatever. So what do you do when it's cold? You stand next to something that's warm. Turn your heater on. Stay close to the heater. Turn the thermostat up. So through association, you can get warm when it's cold. Associate with heat or warmth, you get warmer. So stay in good association. And if you start to like go down, it seems like you're staying down. It's not just a short dip, but it's kind of staying down. Reach out, and reach out anyways, because that's what bhakti encourages us to do. We associate with those that are carrying bhakti. So you keep that association, and it will help.
Thank
It's
you.
not a fix, because still there's something we have to do, because it's our relationship with Krishna. And that faith in the mature stage is prema. You got it? So prema is in the immature stage is faith. Faith in the mature stage is prema. Faith is just the preliminary stage. And there's other along with faith. One of them is gratitude. We spent this whole time on gratitude. I was just with somebody who, American lady, who just had this calamity, that calamity, that calamity. Her mother and her sister or something, and somebody, a close friend, they all died. And boom, boom, boom. So she's spun out because these were really important people in her lives, and just one after the next. So she went into a space that was, why am I so bad, and why? She wasn't complaining to God, but what bad thing have I done? And she was in a dark space for some time. So we spoke about gratitude, and she said that's the space that she's been going into. It's a part of a response to your question, gratitude. That she said there are many wonderful things that are still in my life, and I'm very grateful for them. And she didn't list them, but she's been contemplating. So when you're feeling your faith is down, gratitude is something that can help. Association and gratitude for what you do have. There's lots of things to be grateful for. And where does that thing come into your life? That which you are, appropriately grateful for. What's the source? What's the origin? And it's faith. It's faith nourishing. Next.
One more question. So when I listen to lectures, like I was listening to a Ramayana class lately, and then there was this explanation of how one should devote himself or herself to Krishna.
How one should
devote himself or herself to Krishna. And one of the guidelines where like you should take shelter of the Lord, like Sharanagati, with this feeling that you are the child of the Lord, and even though the Lord throws, like even though a father throws his child up, but the child is always confident that he's going to protect. this is there. And then I also hear to this principle that where devotees say that Krishna can do anything to me, but I am going to
Be
tol-
faithful.
yeah. So what should I put my faith into? Like which form? Like whatever is going to happen is going to be good, or is it like he's always going to protect me?
Well, I don't see there's a contradiction.
I mean, if there's a dangerous situation or something,
A
and it's-
dangerous situation.
yeah. So I was
Are you thinking of something specific?
yeah. So I was like reading about devotees who were spreading Krishna consciousness in Russia
And had risked their lives.
and risked their lives, and about the devotee who Sachisuta Prabhu who lost his life. And I was so amazed by their devotion, but then I was not able to like kind of reconcile that. Uh, so what was the mood that they were having at that period? I was
Oh,
just trying to understand.
They're in Krishna's hands, and Krishna took them to him. I mean, they have that one who has bhakti connects one to Krishna, and one feels connected to Krishna when one has bhakti. They're in Krishna's protection. What happens to the temporary is temporary, and it doesn't mean you won't stub your toe. Protection means you're in the care of the internal potency in all circumstances. And it's not, here's a nice, this Jiva Goswami explains. In the case of Prahlad Maharaj, Krishna spared him. Nrsingadev spared him from being killed by his father. In the case of Maharaj Parikshit, it looks like, wait a minute, unfairly he was cursed and he died. So was there, did Krishna check out? Was he unkind? And Jiva Goswami says, what was Krishna was taking Maharaj, the whole pastime with Maharaj Parikshit was to take him back home swiftly, and to have Srimad Bhagavatam narrated to him, and to show he was totally transcendental. Let the snake bird come, whatever, I'm ready. My mind is fixed upon Krishna. He was in fact fearless, and he wasn't neglected, and he went straight back home, back to Godhead. So that's your question was, what's the consciousness of the person when misfortune comes, and in fact it fructifies? What's the consciousness of that person? They're in Krishna's protection. Now, Krishna's protection may come in a different way. Here's a Bhakti Siddhanta story that surfaced recently. Bhakti Siddhanta, you've not been to Mayapur, right? You have been. Have you been across the river to Navadvip, the city? Okay. So Bhakti Siddhanta had gone from his headquarters in Mayapur to Navadvip, and with many, 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 many devotees who were having loud Sankirtan through the streets of Navadvip. Some local priests were really disturbed because part of Bhaktisiddhanta's message was Navadvip is not the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's on the eastern side of the Ganges. So they hired priests, hired thugs, in local language it's gundas, but thugs, with sticks and stones, they tried to kill him. They were paid murderers by priests. And what happened was one of the Grahastas understood that he was the target, so they changed clothes. Bhaktisiddhanta wore his white dhoti, and this Grahasta devotee wore his sannyas dhoti, and he escaped. He was protected. Later, the police came. It hit the newspaper. Da 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 da, and then the police discovered how it happened, who did what, and they wanted him to press charges against the thugs, and the people that hired the thugs. And he said no. He said they did a nice service for Lord Chaitanya's movement because we never would have gotten the newspaper coverage. It was in the all the Navadvip newspapers for weeks. The Hare Krishna movement, poor Hare Krishna movement people, or Gaudiya Math people. Bhaktisiddhanta is a great person. He was being the target of a. So I don't know what happened, legally. We certainly know what happened between Krishna and the thugs, and the so-called priests that tried to murder him. There was an attempted murder. It was a serious murder attempt. But Krishna protected him. No, it could have happened differently, and that it could have been, he went back to Godhead in the service of Lord Chaitanya. But Krishna had some other idea for him. So that's the consciousness of the person that's having some difficulty.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay.
So Maharaj, this is like a follow-up to her question.
Okay.
So I think 2-3 days ago in the morning Uddhav Gita class, you were reading from a verse where it speaks about Krishna giving protection to his pure devotees. And even if those pure devotees momentarily forget Krishna or leave their body in forgetfulness
You're
of
not
Krishna.
the only one that picked up on that one. But it was right from our Acharya's commentary. So go ahead with the question.
Yes, so and then in the purport, it also spoke about practicing devotees who, in their service, might forget Krishna, but are they also in the protection of Krishna?
Of course. No. The operative principle is bhakti from the devotee's side. And from Krishna's side, it's mercy. And Krishna can show his mercy however he wants to show his mercy. He's not restricted by some guidelines from anybody, even his own. He gives his mercy how he wants to give his mercy. And that's just the way it is. And the devotee, what's under our jurisdiction is not how much mercy of Krishna we get. It's our devotion to be in his service. Genuinely, not just do stuff, but genuinely be in devotion to his service. And that's the protection. It's bhakti that protects the devotee. You can say it's Radharani that protects the devotee. You can say Krishna protects the devotee. You can say Radharani or Bhakti Devi, who is an expansion of Radharani. She protects the devotee. And Krishna reciprocates with Radharani or Bhakti Devi or the devotee on the strength of bhakti, proportionate to. And, he has no rules. But if the follow-up to her question is, that's the faith of the bhakta. Krishna is very kind. It's his nature. The sun shines. It's the nature of the sun. It shines, gives heat and light. And it's the nature of Krishna that he's merciful. We rely on it. It's a fact. That's a faith. Because it's a fact. Just as much as the fact that the sun is hot. Krishna is merciful. And we rely on it. And that's our life. And sometimes, back to the preamble of her question, sometimes faith is down. But, the sun keeps shining and Krishna keeps being merciful. Now, go ahead.
So Maharaj, because like bhakti is so tiny right now in my heart, so and it feels like Krishna's mercy is reciprocal to the bhakti. So you just continue hoping and praying for Krishna's mercy, and
Yeah, you grow your bhakti in your bhakti garden. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You ever do gardening?
a little bit.
A little bit. So the first time you do gardening, the garden much too fast because there's a lot of weeds but by cultivation, it gets to the point where the garden grows lots. And it takes a while even for using another example. You've heard me give this example, I'm sure. The peach tree in the backyard of our house when I was a kid. It took some years for the peach tree to bear peaches. But because it's a peach tree, eventually the peaches were really good. But initially there were no peaches, and then there were the little green things, and then there was little hard peaches, and then there was nice peaches. It took several years. So just follow the bhakti process, sadhana bhakti, faithfully, carefully, devotionally, not just the mechanics of it, but the